Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of distillationsbl. And today we are going to be continuing engaging with John Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And I'm excited for this one. It's episode 4 of his series, and it's called Socrates and the Quest for Wisdom. So we'll be getting into a little ancient Greek philosophy, which I would very much like to hear John Vervaeke's take on this period and these thinkers. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Welcome again to Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. This is episode 4. The other person who is going to figure, and in fact figures even more largely in the axial revolution in ancient Greece, is the figure of Socrates. Socrates and Pythagoras are going to be the two most important influences on Plato, and if you were to put Western civilization onto 2 feet,
obviously Socrates is the biggest influence on Plato. I didn't realize that Pythagoras was another large influence on Plato. That's a good reason to do a bit more digging into Pythagoras and his school and everything surrounding him. So I'll have to take note of that.
The one foot is the Bible, the other foot is the works of Plato. So Socrates is a very unusual figure. There are as many interpretations of Socrates as there are of people like Jesus. Even in his time, there were many different Socratic movements, groups of people who claim to be adherents and disciples of Socrates. He is an enigmatic, interesting, provocative, and maddeningly frustrating figure to try and get clear on. So I want it understood that when I'm talking about Socrates, I'm talking about a particular interpretation that I share with other people. I think it can be well argued for. But as I said, whether or not this was the full historical Socrates, it's very hard to know. And in some sense, this isn't that relevant because it's the Socrates I'm going to talk about that has become part of the cognitive and existential grammar of the West.
It's the interpretation that remains, the one that was the most lindy, perhaps. So whether or not it was an accurate representation of Socrates may not even matter so much. I'm assuming it's probably the interpretation that Plato carried forth in his dialogues, and that's the one that has survived all sorts of disputing factions. This is the one that has remained throughout. So it's the most lindy, it has the most staying power of the interpretations, if what he's talking about is a Platonic interpretation of the figure of Socrates.
So getting into the figure of Socrates is kind of interesting. A good way to start is to see how provocative a person he was, is to do his biography. So, as many of you probably know, ancient Greece was a world in which people believed they could speak to the god through oracles. The oracles were human or otherwise natural phenomena that represented how the gods were speaking to humanity. One of the most important oracles is at Delphi. And I've been to Delphi. If you get a chance at some point in your life, go to Delphi. It will really put the zap on your brain because the way the landscape is organized really does have a transformative impact on sort of your consciousness and your sense of self and your sense of place in the world. So the situation, the site of Delphi is itself very transformative. What would happen is a woman, Pythia, would sit in a cave or something similar to it. Again, the cave, always the caves, like the association with shamanism. Remember that shamanism is associated with cave art, ritual practices taking place in caves, like in Pythagoras. So she's in a cave, she's sitting on a tripod, there might be some intoxicating gases in there, she's eating perhaps eucalyptus leaves, she's probably going into some kind of psychedelic trance state. That seems plausible. And then what happens is people would, because that is a cross-cultural thing, we find that people are thought to have access to the gods by being able to enter into altered states of consciousness. So what would happen is people would come in, they would bring their questions, they would pose questions to Pythia. She would then speak on behalf of the gods, and then after speaking on behalf of the gods, the people around her there would be males who would interpret what she had to say.
Sounds sort of like the same role that a priest or a religious figure would hold today. Bring them questions, consult with them, and they're claiming to be speaking on behalf, maybe not directly, but they're giving you some sort of religious message. There's supposed to be a greater authority on God. So I think maybe there's a similarity there.
The thing about being an oracle is, if you want to stay in business, you don't want to give clear answers. Right? So if I come to an oracle and I ask a specific question, I don't want to give a specific answer. I think there's a very good reason for that. I don't think that people actually can foresee the future in any kind of supernatural manner. So typically, if you go to an oracle and say, should I marry Cassandra, you'll get an answer something like, sometimes the spring comes early. Or
Cassandra, she's the goddess who would always be able to see into the future, but only be able to see the catastrophic fate of something that's going to go wrong. And then like people wouldn't believe her, something like that.
Should I invest in this project? You'll get an answer like, sometimes the squirrels do not gather too many nuts. You don't know what to make of this, and it might provoke an insight in you, it might provoke a reflection in you, and whether or not the events go one way or the other, you can often retrospectively reinterpret them as having been consonant with the Delphic oracles.
Just another quick connection. It also sounds sort of like a Buddhist master, a guru, someone you're studying under, a monk, a Buddhist, I think there's those mentor-mentee relationships within Buddhism. And I know a lot of the interactions or questions are these conversations that the master is eliciting a sort of insight in the mentee or whoever it is, but it's the way that the conversation is had. It's the nonsensical, and yet perhaps there's a greater sense to it, but the nonsensical answers that are supposed to challenge, the way that the mentee is thinking. So that also sounds sort of maybe similar to the function of what's going on with an oracle, or the oracles at Delphi, or the oracle at Delphi.
So the oracle seems to be providing foresightful information, but usually, of course, it's not. So if we're honest, and we found out from some sacred authority that we are very wise, most of us would be very self-congratulatory. It's like, yeah, I knew it. And how do I know that? Because one of the most persistent biases have is that people believe they're above average intelligence. And of course, most people must be wrong about that, because most people have, average intelligence. But if you ask anybody, is your intelligence average? They will tell you, no, I have above average intelligence.
Okay. I don't know if this is some weird meta humble brag or something, but I see myself as above average in curiosity, or the ability to undergo an experience, the ability to open, like I'm very good at opening up to insight, or I'm if anything addicted to insight. It's like I want another insight. I want another one of those moments, and I'm willing to kind of go where things lead me and look into things and ask questions, all those sorts of things. But I never think of that as being intelligent. Like it's some other thing. I equate intelligence with sort of like the IQ test. It's like I was as average as you could possibly get, if not not very good at math. I'm not great at doing those sorts of hyper numerical puzzle solving in my head. I don't excel at that. If I did any tests in high school or whatever, I always did very good on the verbal or the reading and the literature, the English, sort of maybe English class side of things, and a lot less good on the math side. Why am I telling you this? Sometimes people will tell me, they say, you're a smart guy. And I guess I'm just relating to this where I don't think I have the same reaction as that John Vervaeke is predicting someone would have, where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the smart guy. But I don't think I'm having the reaction I have because I'm some great humble person. I do, perhaps in the way that he's addressing here, overestimate my abilities. But I just think that when people give me that compliment or say that, I just think they're misdiagnosing the thing. It's like, you think that that's smartness. That's not smartness. I believe that I am above average in openness, curiosity, the willingness to go down a rabbit hole. Like, I think that is some other thing. And I could be full of shit and my ego could be out of control for my own self-evaluation for how good I am at that thing. But that thing I don't think is intelligence. And what I usually feel is extremely frustrated that I was given, I think, like, genetically, or I was given this set of traits where I am, I think, above average in that openness and willingness to go down these different roads and loving insight and awe and all those sorts of things. And yet not getting paired with also the ability to sort of back it up with the raw intelligence. Like, my memory is absolutely shit. My vocabulary is kind of there, but then, so many times I get stuck and I'm really struggling to find the right word, and, it'll take a lot of time or work. I'll lose my train of thought constantly. That happens all the time. And so, anyway, this is a long digression, but it's just something that comes up a lot where I'm like, what is this? I don't know what it is that I exemplify, this other thing, and if there's a name to that other thing, but it's not intelligence. And I'm also most likely probably committing the sin that he's calling out. Sin, not sin, I don't know. Where my ego is probably overestimating my ability in the openness. Like, I'm probably extremely close-minded. I'm sure I am missing something in the ways that John Vervaeke says you have to be constantly on guard for self-deception. And I'm sure I'm self-deceiving in some way related to this topic. All right, that's all I got on that.
So, of course, even for ideas such as wisdom. But Socrates isn't self-congratulatory. He doesn't say, yep, I knew it all along, there's the confirmation I so want. Now, that's really telling in of itself, because to quote a friend of mine, Leo Ferraro, we are entering the age of confirmation porn, in which people are continuously seeking confirmation from their beliefs. And part of what's going on to the meaning crisis and the ever expansion of bullshit in our society is precisely because we have technologically enhanced through social media our capacity for gratifying our bias for confirmation. We'll talk about this later, but we all carry a terrific bias called the confirmation bias, in which we seek information that confirms our beliefs, and we tend to avoid information that challenges it. And part of what is going wrong right now in our culture is that through a lot of factors that are endemic to the meaning crisis, we are accelerating and exacerbating our propensity for falling into the confirmation bias. And I think that's what my friend Leo means by confirmation porn. We have a kind of pornography. If we take pornography to mean the gratuitous an unmorally justified satisfaction of a desire, then we are living in an age of confirmation porn. Socrates is a corrective to that. Here is a great temptation.
I wonder if that's true. I think I saw that there was some study done in that in this internet age, social media age, the rate at which a person is shown disconfirmatory views or opposing views to your own is actually higher than in previous times. That there is a lot more mixing and a lot more critical content of your own deeply held beliefs or what have you. So it's not confirmation that's going on, but that even though we're exposed to that, it's like we maybe confirmation bias it's like we may what do you call it, hate watch stuff that we disagree with, or we may see it and it may elicit an emotional anger response, but it's not that we're not seeing the other side of things. And I'd have to get the citation for that. That could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I saw that, and I remember being surprised by it because there's a lot of talk about bubbles, people living in information bubbles and not being exposed to other views. So that is one possible nuance where I don't know if it's necessarily confirmation porn, and I'd have to look into what he's talking about exactly and dig deeper there, but that there's some kind of mental bias that's even stronger that isn't necessarily seeking out confirmatory evidence, but in the sea of differing views is more likely to just identify and go, hey, that's someone who's on my team, and here's the stuff they're saying, and then to watch and consume and be exposed to the other views, but then just get angry about it and be more emotional about it. And so it's not necessarily that we're only ever seeking our own confirmation. So anyway.
He has presented the word of the God that he is wise, wiser than anyone else, and rather than accepting it and giving in to that confirmation bias, his immediate response is to challenge it. Now, the challenge is tricky for Socrates. Socrates is no atheist, although he's going to be charged with atheism when he's put on trial. But he does believe in the gods. He's going to do something very important about the gods. He's going to transform the Greek gods into moral exemplars. And what that means for Socrates is the gods can't lie. The gods can't lie. For Socrates, and this is one of the ways he's going to transform the understanding of the gods, and Plato along with him.
They can't lie or they don't lie. As in the myths or the oral histories, the stories around the gods, there is never an example of them lying. Or so it's just a fact, evidential fact of like, hey, through all of our mythology and shared religiosity around these gods, hey, look, they never lie. You can just see it in all the stories we have, and therefore they can't lie, or it's strong evidence that they can't lie. Or is Socrates, I think maybe what John Vervaeke is saying here is that Socrates made this claim that it's a feature, it's a aspect, it's a quality of the gods that they can't lie, and that he's introducing that as a new quality of the gods. Hey, from now on they can't lie, and that's what makes them moral exemplars. I don't know. Let's see where this goes. I'm probably getting ahead of it.
The Greek gods, as they are represented in standard Greek myths, aren't very accurate portrayals because those gods lie and they cheat and they betray. Zeus cheats on his wife, etc. But for Socrates, and this is part of the axial revolution, the gods represent moral exemplars. They represent ways in which we can self-transcend and morally improve. So for Socrates, it's therefore axiomatic that the gods can't lie to him. So
he's proposing this new axiomatic system. Here's this new axiom: they can't lie.
Gods are telling the truth. This wedding, and this is something we're going to come back to, the way the Greeks wed divinity, I should say, to reality, that truth and sacredness are bound up together, is going to be really pivotal. Think about how much we separate those two in our culture. But for Socrates, they are interpenetrating. So the gods can't lie. They have to be disclosers of the truth. But on the other hand, Socrates has significant and profound self-knowledge. One of the things I have tattooed on my back is "Know thyself." It was inscribed at the Delphic Oracle, but Socrates makes it his personal slogan for life. There's been some recent things written about this, and I think they've largely reflected a misunderstanding of what know thyself means. Know thyself doesn't mean become aware of your biography. I mean, we all are prey to that, and we have a culture that exacerbates that narcissism. We like to stroke the ego of our personal autobiography and store up treasured moments that we can point to other people that indicate our uniqueness and our specialness and why the universe should specially take care of and pay attention to us.
Oh, that's hit it way too close to home. Yeah, I do that. And maybe that's something I have to watch out for on this channel. There's another video of John being interviewed, and he talks about how there's a spiritual materialism where someone will sort of put a collection of spiritual experiences that they've gone through up on a shelf and look at it and sort of just be like, look at all these spiritual things that I have accumulated because the universe cares about me in particular. I am some special, chosen, whatever. And I think that's also what he's getting at here, and it's something that I definitely have to be cautious of. I think it's also very much my puer being possessed by the puer, which attempting to work through. You know, I don't want to say that I am a puer, but that the puer is in me and possessing me and has very strongly. And I connected my own experiences to that archetype and then identify with the archetype. Like, hey, like, here's some of the stuff on my shelf, those spiritually materialist collection of experiences, you know, that I've got up here, and I'm looking at them. And if that conforms to the puer, where it's sort of like, you know, goes up and looks at the sun, sort of like Icarus or something, you know, the puer is very, you know, I'm special. The best thing that's come from my confrontation with the puer archetype is that it deflated me in a productive way where, oh, I'm just another puer. And that has stayed with me. I thought that I was living out this unique, weird, spiritually significant. I mean, I went from being an atheist to then opening up to the possibility of spirituality, and then weird things started happening. I was like, oh my God, and here I am doing it. But I used to really kind of, you know, like that is me, and there's something else going on here. Oh my God, what the hell am I going to do with that? And then being exposed to the idea of the puer, it's like, I'm just your run-of-the-mill puer. All of these other puers have the same experience, the same archetypal story, beginning, middle, and end. And there's nothing unique going on here. So that was helpful, and it's something I'm continuing to work through. And I guess going on with this channel, figure out how I'm going to work through it here and not fall into the temptation to display, here's my collection of spiritual experiences, and not get caught up in that.
That's not what know thyself means. It doesn't mean that kind of stroking of your autobiographical ego. Know thyself is much more a kind of direct participatory knowing. It means understanding how you operate. It's if I were to use a literary analogy, it's not like your autobiography, it's more like your owner's manual. It's how do you operate? What are the principles? What are the powers, perils? What are the constraints that are operating within you? Socrates, as we'll see, thought that that kind of self-knowledge was central. And this is the core of the axial revolution. The axial revolution is this critical awareness and sense of responsibility of one's own cognition.
Okay. That, I think, is going to explain maybe why John Vervaeke became a cognitive scientist. He had the philosophy degree and wanted to know thyself and figure out what's going on, what's operating under the surface there. That's cool.
So, on one hand, the gods can't lie when they say Socrates is the wisest human being. But on the other hand, Socrates has deep self-knowledge. He has Socratic self-knowledge in which he is convinced that he is not wise. Now, Socrates seems to have been influenced by a particular one of these natural philosophers called Anaxagoras, who was in Athens just before Socrates. Anaxagoras declared that the sun wasn't a god, for example, that it was a hot rock, and he got into a lot of trouble for things like this. Socrates seems to have enjoyed, more than enjoyed, he seems to have been impressed by the natural philosopher's commitment to getting at the truth. But ultimately, Socrates, he rejects this. Not because he rejects reason, rational analysis, he's going to engage in that himself multiple times, or argumentation. His whole Socratic method, as we'll see, is all about argumentation. What does he reject about the natural philosophers? They don't help him with his axial project. See, the problem with the natural philosophers is they give you truth without transformation. They give you facts, they give you knowledge, but they do not indicate how you become wise. They do not indicate how you overcome self-deception. They do not indicate, as Socrates would say, how to become a good person. Now, it's interesting how much people say that even now, even today, sometimes in clear ways that are helpful, sometimes in confused and mixed up ways which are unhelpful. But the idea that our scientific worldview, while giving us all kinds of knowledge, does not in any way train us for wisdom, does not tell us how to become wise, does not tell us how to transcend ourselves and become better people. This is a common complaint, and we'll come back to it, about the scientific worldview. Socrates sees it even then. So here you have truth, but no relevance. The truths that are discovered are not existentially relevant. They don't matter. They don't enable the cultivation of wisdom, the transformation and transcendence of the self.
Yeah, okay, so what I'm connecting with that is there is that line that, or the idea that because the universe is so vast, billions, trillions, whatever of light years, that, we are just a speck in the vastness of the universe. And maybe when I was younger, I sort of took to heart that meaning of like, oh, we're just meaningless. We're just another speck in this giant universe. But the more I've developed, I suppose, or my take on that has changed to if all of that vastness is just dead matter, it's just inanimate matter. It's rocks and gases and explosions and interesting dynamics, things that we can understand scientifically. But if there's no life on any of these planets or in any of these universes, it's sort of more of the same with some variation. Then why should it make what's going on Earth feel insignificant? If anything, it should make what's going on here that much more significant. It's like of all the, of all those light years, and on this planet, in this corner of the solar system, we've got the most insane shit going down. Like, it's crazy. Like, matter became animate and then went through this entire Darwinian crazy evolutionary process that then led to these apes becoming self-aware on this totally other level of depth and scope, and now we have human culture and human history and all of the ability to fall in love and to have a friendship and to aspire to be wise or aspire to have ontological depth, depth, whatever, like to meditate on the focused richness of what's going on Earth as compared to the immensity of the universe. It's like an insane ratio, an insane asymmetry. And so while there could be lots of truth to discover out there, would it really be worth like mapping out the exact topography? I don't know, the exact, like, to, map out every single inch of the universe, if it just keeps on going and it's slight variations in those patterns, like, does it really make that much of a difference? If anything, what we want to do when we're looking out there, look for interesting things, and interesting things are things that relate to this one planet that had this crazy thing happen, where there are now human beings that are now looking out, and the relevance that is relevant to the richness of this one spot in the universe. We're looking for other life. And if humans hadn't sprung from the other layer of animal life, or, life in general, leading up to bipedal, apes or whatever it is, then, Darwinian evolution would just keep going. And if we never reach self-awareness, then there would be no intelligent, hyper-intelligent apes that would be interested in looking for other life out there. We'd just be in the food chain trying to survive. The rest of life isn't interested in the asymmetric scale of the universe. They're interested in the richness of what's going on the planet. So after all of that, to connect it back to what he's saying here, there can be tons of truth in the vastness of the universe, but it can be profoundly irrelevant, I guess, is what I'm proposing. And that's a proposal. That's another intuition that I have. It's not absolute. I'm not just claiming something outright, but I think that's one alternative way of looking at it.
Now, Socrates interacting with the sophist, which is famous, is a lot more antagonistic. This, when he talks about his relation here, it's much more the language, or the tone, at least that's how I read it, of disappointment. He was expecting more, and he found less. Here, and it's not clear how much this is Socrates and how much this is Plato who's writing about Socrates, but here the relationship is much more antagonistic. What happens is a group of people invent a new psychotechnology. They invent rhetoric. They invent ways of picking up on how language and cognition interact. They find standardized skills that can be practiced and developed so that you can influence people, increase the chance that your language will change their mind. Now, how does this work, and how can we relate it to our lives now? So, basically, a good way to think about this is the sophists pick up on the fact that when we are communicating, we're going to talk about this a lot later as we go on, we are being driven by what we find salient and relevant, not just what we find true or believe to be the case. Remember with the 9-dot problem, what stands out to us, what's relevant, shapes how we see things and how we understand them. Let me give you a modern analog for how rhetoric works, a place where rhetoric is readily apparent. Advertising. See, the point about advertisement is to make use of the way your brain will associate things, the way your brain finds certain things salient, make things seem highly relevant to you in order to manipulate your behavior.
Is it rhetoric or is it psychologically appetizing, poetic, maybe not poetic, creative? It's the writing. I don't know if the writing is rhetoric in a way that political debate would be rhetoric. That's the example that I would go to, that we see a lot of these days as social media has exploded, and there's talking heads everywhere and rhetoric is all over the place. Advertising, and maybe this is just post psychology becoming a really established discipline, but it seems like it's sort of psychological tidbits applied into an art form. Or maybe this is what makes it not art, but it's sort of just like trying to pull on wires in people's brains in ways that will get them to purchase the thing. I don't know.
Now, what's telling about this, and this is the point about the sophist, is how much that can happen, right, in a way that is disconnected from whether or not it's true. I mean, you watch the beer commercial, and here it is. Here's really attractive people. And they all get together, and they're all having a great time, and it's this beer, and here's the beautiful, attractive people. Go into an actual bar. That's not like that. Okay, and you're not going to see the kind of broken down lives, drunk people.
Depends which bar. I mean, depends on where you're at. I mean, there are attractive people having good times at bars in places, maybe they put the camera in one of those places. I don't know if it's not universal. It's not distributed to every single bar anywhere. I mean, I don't know if that's a great example.
Now, here's the thing. You know that that's not true. You know that if you went into a bar and you actually saw something like that happening, if when you washed your hair with shampoo, you were suddenly in the shampoo commercial, you'd worry about your sanity.
Okay, but when I see a commercial or like a beer commercial, first of all, like I said, I know that bars like that, there are situations like that. It's an idealization of certain things that are psychologically appealing. It's an idealization, but it's also an idealization in the same way that watching a movie. I know that actors are on average more attractive and better at acting, than maybe not more intelligent. Maybe that's kind of something that's a trope or something, that actors aren't that smart. But I know that this situation and this thing, it's a story. It's a creative expression of the writers and the actors doing their thing and everything. And commercials are also, aspiring actors, and they're selling a thing. And the situation is definitely an idealization. But I don't know if it's totally. What bothers me when I watch one of those things is that it's like the uncanny valley. It's like you're trying to get at something that's true. It's better with the oh my god, these medication commercials for whatever medications with all of the side effects at the end, and but those little stories that they tell, the grandma and the granddaughter there's one that I just saw at the play, and there's this star that's lit up, and it goes into the grandma's heart, and it's whoa, this is an idealization that is weird. Who is this actor, actress, this old woman who's cool with doing that? I mean, hopefully the medication actually helps people, and I get that, but the whole thing is so it's in the uncanny valley. It's there's just something not quite right about it. I mean, but maybe if you are someone with that condition, and that's who they're probably testing these commercials on, they've got a sample group or whatever, what do you call those things? A focus group. And if that focus group is composed of people with the heart condition and they do, the little star going into the center of your heart and your granddaughter's play or whatever. And maybe it works on people that it is relevant to. And then for someone who it's not relevant to, it's creepy and weird and just not right. There's something off about it. And maybe it's because I was at bars and, hanging out with people where I'm like, okay, like that's more relevant to me. And my problems with addiction weren't necessarily tied to that. Going out to a bar could be fun, and it's closer in relevance to me. So the uncanny, there's not as much friction in the uncanny valley. It's like it's closer. It's not as uncanny on the scale. Where it's like, okay, I get it. Maybe when we were all a bit thinner in college or something. But that's not too much of an idealization. So I don't know how much of a issue that is with this analogy. I just think maybe political debate or discussions or something like that could be more closely tied to rhetoric, if I'm understanding rhetoric in the right way here.
You know it's not true. It doesn't matter. It makes certain stimuli salient to you. And so you buy the beer. You buy the shampoo. This is what I mean when I say your beliefs aren't the only thing driving you. So this brings us to a notion I promised to come back to, and I want to use it technically. I'm not trying to be vulgar, but this is important. This is the notion of bullshit. And the classic work is by Harry Frankfurt on this. His essay on bullshit. It's 20 years old now.
I know Frankfurt from other analytic philosophy topics, but that's pretty cool. I didn't realize he had this whole, and I'm familiar with, John Vervaeke talks about it a lot. I'll have to read that.
Because Frankfurt is very interested in talking about the difference between somebody being a bullshit artist and somebody being a liar. Because they aren't the same. They can overlap. A person can be both a liar and a bullshit artist. But let's talk about pure cases. How does the liar work? The liar depends on your commitment to the truth. The liar tells you something. Mm-hmm. I'll use P to represent some proposition. The liar says P to you, even though not P is the case, because if he can convince you that P is the case, you will change your behavior, because your behavior is, to some degree, significant degree, influenced by your commitment to the truth. If you believe P is true, that will change your behavior. That's how lying works. Lying depends on the fact that in general, people are committed to the truth, because in general, people want to be in touch with reality. That's not how bullshit works.
Okay.
See, bullshit, unlike lying, works by making you disinterested, unconcerned with whether or not what is being said is true. When somebody's bullshitting you, they're trying to get you to not find important or central how true the claim is. Instead, they're working in terms of the rhetoric. They're trying to capture you in terms of how catchy it is, like the advertiser. How salient it is, how much it grabs your attention.
Again, I just keep coming back to, I think political speech is a better example for this, because like the catchiness in an advertisement, I mean, all of that, if you've watched Mad Men or something, it's like, I think you can have a lawsuit against your company if you lie, if you outright lie. And now we're into the bullshit range, like, there's always a kernel of truth. It's blown out of proportion. It's idealizations. I keep coming back to this word of idealization. It's warped and twisted and blown out of proportion, but there needs to be some kind of tie to the truth. Because if there was no tie to the truth, there's got to be some kind of connection where a person is, it's like you got to look at the back at the label of the nutrition of the thing, or look at the side effects for the medical pill that you're being sold, or how the lawnmower works, and if the lawnmower has, extra strong blades or whatever, it's like the advertisement will take this feature that is true. It's a true feature of the product, and it's idealized. It's blown out of proportion. It's then crafted in a way to be catchy and salient to your psychology in these other ways. But again, I'm not quite agreeing that a person is totally disinterested in the truth. Because I think then for lots of people, sometimes I am. Like, you go in and you read product reviews and you go, is this feature legit? Like, I saw the advertisement, sounded too good to be true, because I'm not, like, I get that it's out of proportion, but now it's time to like figure out, like, it's got to be tied to something. Like, it obviously has blades. It claims the blades are made of titanium. I don't know, whatever kind of metal is stronger. Okay, now let me look up, like, how legit is that? Is it actually stronger metal? Has it been tested? How far away from the truth did it get? The idealization get? But I'm just coming back to, I don't think it's that I'm not concerned for the truth at all when it comes to advertising. And I'm really lasering in and nitpicking just on, I just think there's better examples of rhetoric. I'm just getting hung up on, I don't know if you can, I think I've said enough. I'm just getting hung up on this, because I think if, that bullshit does mean this thing, technically it's unconcerned for the truth. I think if it's a political thing and it's your team and you're the person on the talking head on the show is debating with the person from the other team, and logically they didn't make the correct point, but then they use a way of talking that makes the opponent seem ineffective and weak, or like they might be wrong, like, then you're unconcerned for the truth. Who cares what the truth is? My team needs to win to get this policy through that, helps people that I really think need to be helped. And these talking heads are just a vehicle to getting that other thing done. And so I need the person debating to have a very good rhetorical flourish to convince more of the audience that, what I mean? Like, that to me is like, who cares what the truth is? If this back and forth is just one piece of this greater political project, then, it's bullshit, or it could be classified as bullshit because I'm unconcerned with the truth. I'm using all these logical fallacies a master of logical fallacies in order to elicit certain responses or something. And advertising, I think it's something else. It's not, there's some other mechanism happening. There's something else happening there. It's a uncanny valley, asymmetric mechanism that if people were totally unconcerned with the truth when it came to advertising, I just don't, then they wouldn't buy it. Then why buy it at all? Or why listen to the advertisement? It's got to be making a claim on the nature of the product. It's got to be. There's got to be a tie there. All right. I have to move on from this. I have to get over this hang up.
So there was a famous example from The Simpsons, and The Simpsons has been on for 1,000 years now, and I think it's still on. So this is from a long time ago, and at the time it seemed so almost absurdly ridiculous funny, but it's turned out to be extremely, extremely prescient, because the example is a political example. There are two aliens running for political office, and they're giving a speech to Americans, right? And I mean no insult to Americans, but I think we're aware of what I'm going to say is relevant to American politics right now. And the speech goes something like this. One of the aliens, named Kang, says, "My fellow Americans, when I was young, I dreamt of being a baseball. But now we must move forward, not backwards, upwards, twirling towards freedom." And everybody cheers. Now, it's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. But he invokes youth, baseball, moving forward, moving upward, twirling, and freedom. And so if you're an American, you get this rush. You get this rush. That rush is, these are all salient things. They're highly relevant to you. You associate and identify with them. And so you're swept up, you're caught up in it.
Yeah, I like this example. I think this makes the point better. And I think that was my only point, was that this point is made stronger by this example. Personally, that's my take.
Now, why does bullshit matter? Well, as I said at the beginning, part of the way people articulate the meaning crisis is there's so much bullshit and it seems to be increasing. We are separating relevance and salience from truth. But there's a deeper reason, and I think this is part of why it matters to Socrates. Look, you can't, although we use this metaphor for self-deception, it's actually not a good metaphor. You can't lie to yourself. It makes no sense.
Oh, that's it. Okay, I want to hear more. You can't lie to yourself. Okay, I want to hear more.
Cognitive psychologists have been pointing, and philosophers have been pointing this out. You can't know, not pee, and then say to yourself, but pee, but pee. The trouble is, you know that this is not the case, and so simply stating this to yourself doesn't do anything. You can't lie to yourself because you're in possession of the truth. Did I just prove to you that self-deception is impossible? No, not at all. See, you can't lie to yourself, but here's what I would argue. You can bullshit yourself.
Okay.
Why? Because lying has to do with believing. I'm going to come back to this again and again. Look, believing isn't something you directly do. Here, I'll show you. Pick a belief you would like to have. I would like to have the belief that everybody loves me. I don't believe that, but I would like to truly have that belief.
Yeah.
So what should I do? I should just believe. Believe. You see televangelists doing this, telling people, believe. But you can't. You can hope that everybody loves you. You can wish that everybody loves you. But if I say, believe it, you can't do it. That's not how belief works. It's not a voluntary action. You can't lie to yourself. See, self-deception works in a different way. You know what you can do? You can bullshit yourself. How can you bullshit yourself? Because what you can do is direct your attention. If I say, pay attention to this finger, you can.
Distract yourself. Direct your attention away from where you believe it ought to be.
And you can also choose to pay attention to something. Now, attention, and we'll talk about this later, and it's how central it is. There's two sides to attention. You can direct your attention. For example, if I say, your left big toe, you're paying attention to it, and suddenly it's salient to you. When you pay attention to something, it makes it more salient. It stands out for you. But you know what else? Attention can also be not only be directed by you to make things more salient, your attention can be caught. A sudden noise, and you turn, and you attend to it. It was salient, and it captures your attention. So not only can you direct your attention can be captured by what you find salient. And notice what this means you can do. You can direct your attention to something and make it more salient. And because it's more salient, it will tend to capture your attention. And because you're paying attention to it, you make it more salient, which means it will more likely capture your attention. Do you see what's happening here? These two things feed on each other. I pay more attention to it, it becomes more salient. It becomes more salient, it gathers my attention. I pay more attention to it, I'm more likely to be attracted to it. And it spins on itself in a self-organizing manner until your attention is attached to something. It's super salient to you. It's highly relevant to you. And you lose the capacity to notice other things. That's how you bullshit yourself. The salience and the catchiness of the stimulus has overtaken any concern you have for whether or not it's true or represents reality.
Oh. So you get caught in this reciprocal feedback loop that just becomes more and more shiny and attractive to your attention, to the point where it doesn't matter how connected to reality it is.
This is how you deceive yourself. So do you see, that's why Socrates is going to be so antagonistic towards the sophists. They are the opposite of the axial revolution. They are the opposite of that rational self-knowledge, the attempt to overcome self-deception. The sophists are promoting bullshit. And when you promote bullshit, you not only promote the deception of others, you make yourself more vulnerable to self-deception. You fall more and more prey to self-deception.
The more crap you consume, the more likely you are to allow yourself to be consumed by crap. Like, it's just a vicious cycle. That makes a lot of sense. The more you let yourself be filled by the shiny thing, the more you're just going to want to lose yourself in that shiny thing, even though there are other things that should be garnering your attention that you are deliberately not paying attention to because this one is shiny and this one has you in, it's like a whirlpool towards the shiny object. And you got to get out of that whirlpool. You got to swim real hard to get to the life raft that is survival, truth and survival, and self improvement or whatever, or salvation, the salvation, you got to get out of that whirlpool.
The natural philosophers are truth without relevance. The sophists and their propensity for the promotion of bullshit represent relevance disconnected from truth.
Oh, that's cool. It's just the mirror image. It's the swap in. That's very interesting. Truth without relevance, then relevance without truth.
So notice here, they have the power to transform people, but they've disconnected it from the pursuit of the truth. These people can give us knowledge of the facts, but do not facilitate self-transformation. What Socrates wanted is he wanted both. He wanted individuals who knew how to pay attention in such a way that what they found salient helped them determine the truth, and that the truth that they found helped them to train their attention to find salience. Socrates wanted something like that.
Truth and relevance.
So what he would do is he would go about questioning people, maddening frustration. So Socrates would come up to somebody and say, well, what are you doing here? And, oh, I'm in the marketplace. Well, why are you in the marketplace? Well, I'm purchasing something. Well, why are you purchasing something? Well, I want to get these goods. Well, why do you want these goods? Because they'll make me happy. And then Socrates starts to, oh, so you must know what happiness is. Well, happiness is pleasure, Socrates, I guess, and these things give me pleasure. But is it possible, Socrates would ask, to have pleasure and still find yourself in a horrible situation that you really dislike? Well, of course, Socrates, that's possible. Oh, so then happiness isn't pleasure. You're being coy with me. Tell me, Socrates would say. What is happiness? Oh, it's getting what's most important to you. Well, that means that you have to have knowledge. Is it any kind of knowledge? Well, no, it's the knowledge of what's important. What's truly important, or what you only think is important? I guess what's truly important, Socrates. Okay, so what's that knowledge of what's truly important called? I guess that would be wisdom, Socrates. Oh, so in order to find happiness, you must have first cultivated wisdom. Tell me how you cultivate wisdom and what wisdom is. And the person goes, they collapse. They get to this point where they can't answer.
That was so impressive. That was cool. I guess just his ability to paraphrase. Is it one Socratic dialogue? I don't know, but that he just took us on a journey. That was cool.
They fall into a state called aporia. People compared it to being stung by a stingray or falling under a magician's spell. Socrates is trying to get you to realize, he's like incarnating the axial revolution. He's trying to get you to realize how much each one of us, myself included, how much we're bullshitting ourselves all the time. Why? Because we pursue things. We find things salient to us. There, happiness, fame. It's salient to us, and we're pursuing it. We're putting our efforts into it way before we understand it, way before we grasp the truths of it. We are always making ourselves susceptible to bullshit because we are being driven by powerful motivations that are salient to us, that are greatly in excess.
I guess I'm just fatigued by always trying to figure out the deeper motivation and I don't know, the Socratic process of like, well, what's really behind this and what's really behind that, and like, you know, at a certain point, it seems like it's to truly answer those things, it's calling for too much of me, where it's like the flow state he was talking about. It's outside of my level of competence, and it's like every little insight or acquisition in this process of like, okay, like I thought I was unique, I'm really a puer eternus. Oh my god, I'm just your average puer. Got it. Insight. Nice. Is that supposed to... I hate hard, and part of the puer is I hate hard work. I just can't work. I can't get myself to... I want things to come easy. Okay, great. Insight. Got it. But then it hasn't led to anything. It didn't lead to anything, to any change, because then it's like, okay, like the hard work goes into a direction. I want to achieve a certain thing, and then I go into, are my motivations and my intentions pure enough? It's like the puer is like you looking at the stars and looking at the, you know, trying to get close to the sun, you know, and having a spiritual experience or whatever, or philosophical insight about the nature of reality, whatever. Like all of those things then give me a roadmap towards a particular direction. There's a destination. And now I'm figuring out why I can't get the hard work of achieving that is because I'm a puer. But then it's like, okay, like I got the puer insight, but then am I really of pure intentions? Am I really motivated in a way that is moral and that is truly looking out for the good of other people? Is that a fool's errand? Should I be more selfish or more narcissistic and just try to achieve the thing just for the sake of my own self-gratification, or you know, like if I get too lost in I'm helping humanity and blah blah blah, then I go into, well, you know, other people have tried to help humanity and cause devastation, and is it too risky to do anything at all, because any move you make is risking the potential for harm? And I guess what I'm just struggling with is that attempting to understand all these layers and always dig into another layer can just lead to this kind of stultifying, paralyzing, not wanting to take any steps in any direction. Because it's like every time I uncover another insight about the true nature of the things, it's like another door of like another thing I have to question. Or there's another layer that I have to figure out first before I can take any action or move in any direction. If I even want to move in that direction, because what if that direction is perilous to others, you know, or to myself and to others? Like, is it part of my puer messiah complex to even want to put things out there for others to consume? Is this all a narcissism play, or is it actually with the intent to help people? And when I did have, I think, very pure motivations to help people, I think I was also a young kid who was extremely naive about the way the world truly worked and wanted to change the world by blah, 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 blah. You know, trying to be a startup founder back in the day. That was my thing. As you can see, this can be aggravating, and I don't know if it's prescription of that sort of questioning being a good thing. I mean, and again, maybe I'm just not supposed to enjoy this process, and it is going to be a slog, questioning and removing layers and checking motivations and intentions, or figuring out like the destination and the metaphysics of that destiny. You know, if it's I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm, a little peek inside all the warring factions within my own mind that are almost like all so equally powered that I'm at a standstill. All right, let's keep going.
Of our understanding of their truth or reality. We're always, all of us, bullshitting ourselves. And what that does is that provokes a reaction in people. It goes one of two ways. People either go, ah, and they don't want to be showing that about themselves, and they become angry at Socrates. Or some people have an insight. They realize, oh, I need to transform myself. I need to find a way to keep relevance and truth tracking each other, enabling each other. And when Socrates realized that he was having this effect on people, he had his answer to his dilemma. He knew how it was that the gods were not lying, and he was the wisest of human beings. His answer was the following. He knew what he did not know. And we all say, I know what I don't know. I'm ignorant of a lot of things. No. He knew in a way that allows you to directly, painfully confront your capacity for bullshitting yourself. Mm-hmm. To really realize what you do not know is to realize, I'm pursuing her and I don't know what's going on. I'm pursuing that and I don't know what's going on. That's what he's talking about.
Is that what I was just doing? So it's a good thing?
Now,
it doesn't feel like a good thing. If that's what I was doing. I don't know if that's what I was doing. Oh, another example of if that thing? Is this just me getting in my own head? Oh, look, I'm doing this thing that Socrates was talking about doing. God, it's so exhausting. It's like there's the thing and doubt. There's the thing and the doubting of the thing. And both are so always equally present and equally powered. Kierkegaard has this thing about like the self fighting the self, and that they're both, you can never win because they're both equally strong and powered, and that it just ends in annihilation of the self and the war of the self. And that there's, I don't know, I'm speculating, I can't remember. If I go further by, I would imagine then it's like, okay, like there's just sort of nothing underneath all of that. Because they're both equally matched and they negate out of there. Because I don't know if that's right. All right, moving on.
Many people think that Socrates just concluded that that's it. He didn't know anything. No, that's not what Socrates is talking about. Socrates does claim to know things. You can imagine how Socrates pisses people off. So he's put on trial. In ancient Athens, there isn't a state that arrests you. One citizen accuses another, you're brought on trial, you're put in front of 500 men. It's always men, remember? Very, very, very chauvinistic society. And then the accuser presents their case, the defendant presents their case, and then the jury votes on it. So Socrates was accused by people that he pissed off of atheism, which doesn't mean not believing in gods. It just means teaching strange gods. Because as I mentioned, he was concerned to make the gods moral exemplars.
It's not that they don't lie, it's that they can't lie. That was a Socratic innovation. That would be pretty disruptive to just be redefining a religious or mythological understanding that all of Athenian culture agreed on. That's pretty daring. That's pretty disruptive. Galilean, in a way.
Now, when Socrates is on trial, it becomes clear that they will let him go if he sort of agrees to stop doing this philosophy stuff that he's doing, stops pissing people off. And then he utters something that's very famous. And this is a statement of him deeply knowing something. He says, "The unexamined life is not worth living." A life in which there is no effort made to put these two together is a life that is not worth living, because it is a life, to use our terms, that is awash in bullshit, that is beset by self-deception and self-destructive behavior. So once again, you still find, right, the shamanic has been carried into the Socratic in really important ways. We're going to talk about later how those two are interwoven together. Now, Socrates has many followers, but there's one person who was present at the trial but wasn't present at his death when he drinks the hemlock. That person who was present at the trial and even offers to pay for Socrates' release, but is ill and not present at his death, is Plato. And Plato, as I've foreshadowed, is going to take Pythagoras and Socrates and put them together and advance, even more significantly, the axial revolution in ancient Greece. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. I feel like these are getting more and more relevant, I suppose. This one was a doozy in the best kind of way. Not sure what else to say other than thank you for watching. If you've stuck with me so far, if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to the channel. I mean, that'd be awesome. So you get all the other videos that are coming out, that I'm putting out regularly. Like in this video, sharing with a friend, whatever. Patreon, but we'll get there when we get there. Just saying, it exists. It's a thing. But thank you for watching if you have watched. I really greatly appreciate it. And I guess we're just going to keep going with this series. It's getting good. It's getting very good. All right. Thanks so much. See you later.